Right, back to ball action is in a composition as just a flat screen. On the composition outside of that, so that I could, as explained, procedural adjustments, etc., etc. What I did was I applied a CC cylinder to it, which, I mean, it's basically doing exactly what you'd probably guess it was doing, being that it's called cylinder. It turned that flat plane into a cylinder, hence that it's round. Once it had turned it into a cylinder, what I decided on with the intro, because again, this was just back when I was playing around, fiddling around, seeing what was viable and what wasn't. But I discovered it turned it into a cylinder, and then I thought, okay, can you run a camera? Because you can use cameras in After Effects, for those of you who don't know. Can I run a camera through that cylinder like it was some kind of strange little tunnel? Lo and behold, yes, I can. So this is a 3D style setup in After Effects where I literally run the camera down the tunnel. So you can see here, so that's the camera, and then the camera sort of stops, pushes along into the frame a little bit. You can see it getting a little bit closer, and then whoosh, the camera moves down the tunnel once again, and then it gets a little bit closer to that frame, and then whoosh to the next one, etc., etc., etc. And so, yeah, I essentially just copied this tunnel over and over again, sent it down the Z-axis. I think it was somewhere around the region of 1,000 pixels or points or whatever it's measured in. Whatever the value is, it was minus 1,000 and something, then minus 2,000 and something, which is exactly double, etc., etc. Mathematics allows you to form this beautiful little tunnel. And so I stuck the camera in, and halfway through the intro, probably about that point maybe, I pushed the camera along, and suddenly the camera flipped on me. And it was like, oh, what the fuck? Why is the camera flipped? And it took me a moment or two, but I discovered that the cameras actually have target points as well. Much like I knew roughly that idea from my experiments and fiddlings in 3ds Max, but I didn't know After Effects cameras had this idea. So there is a target point for the camera. So essentially, if you cross that target point with the camera, it flips round. As I say, very simple stuff. And so I ended up having to look into the camera to decide why are you doing this? Do I need to do something specific? Do I just need to move the point? Or do I have to animate the point? Or where's the point? What's the point? I don't know. But nonetheless, I discovered that it is just a point where the camera is looking. It's nothing to do with focal lengths or anything like that. It's literally just the target the camera is looking at. So you could move the target instead of the camera, and the camera would twist and turn to focus on it. But all I had to do was move it back to that very end point of the tunnel. So, hang on. Oh, there we go. So back there in the ether space is the target of the camera, so that it's always facing the correct direction. But in that weird experimentation or weird sort of trying to find out how the fuck the cameras work, I found the camera zoom icon. And I thought, okay, maybe, do I need to fiddle with the zoom? This was before I'd found the actual sort of target point option. I fiddled with the zoom and found this crazy fucking mess of weirdness. And it was even weirder when I first did it. I did adjust it slightly to get that sort of almost flower-esque centre to it for the beginning bit. But so essentially, yeah, if you zoom the camera right up to itself, so I think it was, I think it was literally a zoom of 1, which was the lowest you could do. It has this weird fucking trippy tunnel effect, which was quite nice. And what you can do is, of course, if you know where you need your zoom level to be, and you know that 1 is the fucking weird one, basic animation keyframe principles are you make it 1 and then you make it the value you need, which gets you and then you just go back to standard moving the camera along the tunnel. And I was very pleased with that. It's a very strange effect. Yeah. But, yeah, strange but visually pleasing, especially if you add, and a little fun fact, these are pretty much all, I think, The music I did get from the YouTube audio library, because I figured it was probably the easiest place to get music, and I quite liked the trippy space dance techno vibe. Was quite nice for this sort of trippy space tunnel. It wasn't. I mean, it sort of accidentally became like a trippy space tunnel, because it was sort of almost like, okay, this is kind of like Doctor Who Vortexy style thing. I'm heading down, and then I found the spherizing planes, and it went, oh, it's planets. Oh, it's planets, right? We're definitely going trippy space technique somewhere along the line, and the music was incredibly apt for it. I think what I did was this is the beginning of the track really sped up, and then when it sort of, hang on, I can't hear the point now. I edited it so well. No, I definitely can't. Wow. Okay, maybe I changed my mind. I don't know. I must have changed my mind and didn't leave that cut in. I mean, that's too smooth. There'd be evidence if I'd fiddled around and cut into it. But essentially what I did do... I went a little bit too far there. What I often do with the music is I pick a point in the music and then time it to a specific event. And for this one, it felt natural to get that sort of lowered tempo for the final sort of 8-year anniversary frame. So essentially then I just tracked it back, and I think it's I can't remember the name of the track off the top of my head whatsoever, but it was sped up to about 150 to 200%. So it's actually, 1.5 to 2 times as fast as it's supposed to be, but it does make for a sort of trippy space tunnel nicely. Now, what else was I going to say? I think it was something else to do with this. Oh, the sound effects was what I was going to mention. The whooshes, that I think was a YouTube one that I just looked up, Space Effects. But that whoosh and the whoosh. It's okay if you're supposed to be reading it. It's not so good when you're just waiting for the sound effect. But those whooshes are actually the Millennium Falcon, for those of you interested. Because it went well with the spacey theme, and oh no, I shouldn't be using other people's sound effects. But what can I say? A nice whooshy engine passing by from a Millennium Falcon really went well. So I went, fuck it. I don't actually earn any money off of this, so I need to be less flippant regarding copyright rules, as is seen throughout. I've gotten better over the years, but I'm still slightly flippant. Is there anything else you want to say about this intro here? No, I don't think so. It was designed exclusively as an experimental, let's see what I can piece together in After Effects. Possibly should have done something at the very end of the tunnel. I don't know. It's a bit sort of like, oh, it's just literally a tunnel to nowhere. Maybe there should have been something at the end of the tunnel. But it wasn't necessarily supposed to be a space tunnel to an actual place. It was just supposed to feature these. I suppose one crucial thing I should mention as well is, of course, when you see them, they are gyrating to the music. They're not, if you were interested, they're not actually gyrating to the music. Although you do get that interesting effect. Ewan Words, motherfucker, Ewan Words. He's a lovely fella. Ewan Words, have you ever met him? No, I've never met Ewan Words. Because you just made him up. Yes. Now, me and Words are not doing well today, but there is a audio phenomenon. Not that. That's not an audio phenomenon. I can't say the word phenomenon anymore. That was impressive. There is a sort of thing where, I can't remember the exact term for it, but what you see will match what you hear, despite the fact that it doesn't. It's not... Audio dissonance is a thing, but that's not it. That's when... That audio dissonance is when they do, like, little children's rhymes in horror movies. Because it's so opposing, I think that's I did audio theory at one point in time. It was a good few years ago, and I can barely remember what I did yesterday. So you'll have to forgive me for not remembering entire sections of audio theory. But there is an audio theory that says music will end up matching the motions of something because that's just what happens in your brain. So they don't actually wiggle in time to the music. What they do, I've given it away. I was trying to avoid the word wiggle because I was going to leave it as the big reveal. But no, what it is you just apply a wiggle effect or wiggle expression in After Effects. And what you do is you tell the machine, okay, I want you to wiggle this many times per second for a variance of this value. And I think I used relatively low values, and it's still pretty fucking wiggly. But essentially that's wiggling on 3 dimensions, because this is all done in a 3D space. You've got your X, Y, and Z axis it's wiggling on. And then I think it's also wiggling on the XYZ rotation axis as well. So it's moving on both positional waggling and rotational waggling. So you get this super waggle, super waggle. And this is again where you've got procedural stuff, because you can see here the planet is waggling. The planets are waggling with the text because the text and the planets are on the same layer. But you'll also note I did put a little bit of motion in the planets, so the planets are moving ever so subtly around the place as well. So I'll have a review. I think I've discussed more than I should have discussed with this intro. I think I've given you a lot of techniques. If you try and search some of the key little terms I've done, you would learn more. I think I've allowed you that level of sort of. Oh God, words today. What is wrong with your brain? I don't know. Maybe it's dying from the heat. Perhaps it is quite hot, so maybe that's it, but probably not. Some of the key terms, although I've probably explained them very poorly, if you take some of those key words I've spouted, you will find that you'll probably be able to find the techniques and do a much better job, I imagine. But nonetheless, let's review it one more time, see if there's anything else that springs to mind. But I think I've probably explained it in far too greater detail, if anything. Techno. I love that music is stuck in my fucking brain. And whoosh. But you can see the Saber plugin isn't just the outline. You can see there's a sort of a wave effect around the text as well, which is quite a nice little extra. That's nothing I did extra. That is all to do with the Saber plugin, exclusively Saber. So thank you very much to Video Copilot for releasing that as a free plugin, and I have abused it beyond comparison, as discussed, and will be discussed later on. But for now, I think we've got to get past, I don't know how long this has been so far, but that's been a lot of discussion on one intro, and we've got 58 minutes worth of intros left. But we'll probably try and skip through some reasonably swiftly, because now I've discussed a lot of those techniques from Video Copilot. I'll avoid discussing them in the future. So let's look. Oh, hello to anyone out there, which is the first words I said on YouTube. And this was the first thing anybody ever saw on my YouTube channel, which is the intro to James Bond on the Game Boy. No, it's not, because, I'd forgotten that was the thing. Yeah, in this video, I put in some extra little frames. It's the exact same thing. I just I duplicated it all. Then, again, with the procedural idea, you can just change the text. You just change the text. I flip the planets around a little bit, and lo and behold, done and dusted. It really is that simple. And I added an extra little piece of different music. But now, wait for it, and Bond. Doo-doo. Naturally use the Bond theme. It's a Bond LP, you kind of have to. again with the whole copyright thing, I suppose. But I mean, if you're making something that's designed to be Bond, you'd want something that resembles Bond, right? But okay, that, I mean, it fundamentally, it's fucking dreadful. That's what it is. But I will, to a certain extent, explain why it's fucking dreadful. So, okay, the first reason it's dreadful is its 4:3 ratio, at least. It might be even fucking dodgier ratio, but still. Also, you can see that apparently black is not always black in these situations. I think the gap was deliberate. I deliberately left a very specific equal gap. I can't remember why. Might have been based on the limitations of exporting the images potentially, but there is a gap there which I would prefer not to have. And then I mean the fundamental design there being that it was James Bond on the Game Boy. I quite like that. It's a Game Boy in the James Bond logo. There's nothing wrong with it. It's, executed to the best of my capacity at that time. Nowadays, I do look at it and go, "Oh, that's not great, is it?" But then again, it captured everything you needed for it to be a James Bond Game Boy logo. Because I think anybody looking at that would be able to tell that's the rifling emblem of James Bond, isn't it? So you could tell. So I quite enjoy that. And that's kind of the purpose of opening sequences, is to get you kind of prepped and readied for what you're about to view. And that's why I like to do them all based on the games I'm about to be playing. I know you could argue for this sort of YouTube thing. You could argue that, yes, if you did one for me, J-Dragon 56, as a universal one, then people would be ready for me. But I like to have combined one. I like to make more work for myself, essentially, and I'll explain this a bit more later on. I think it's more relevant later. But I just, for some reason, I don't know why, I have a passion for the opening sequence. That has influenced basically everything I've done for these LP things. But let's review it again and see what we got. So, okay, that's a fade, which is not great. That's just the letters coming on, which is, I mean, I grant you that's okay. It's a bit slow, but the actual principle of that being sort of the bullet sound effects, the audio definitely helps it a lot, but we'll see later on when I redo James Bond with greater techniques that I do actually start animating that blood a little bit more. But you can see here I've managed to actually pause it on exactly the right sort of frame. You can see that that's just an overlay in that shape faded on top. Now you might be thinking, why? I don't know. You might not be thinking why. You might not give a shit. Which in this case, definitely avoid this video because this is far too much stuff you probably don't give a shit about. But anyway,